Hi there. Thanks for those who are here. We're going to start in a short while. We're just going to wait for another minute or so, and we'll start sharply at 8 o'clock SGT. I'm glad that you have come, and we're going to have a good time today. Okay, so hang tight, and I'll be back in a short moment. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the EON-XR monthly workshop. We have quite a few people with us tonight. I think they are still streaming in, which is no problem. We'll just give them another minute or so. But thank you for coming. I know it's difficult. Some of you may come from different parts of the world. This webinar is a global webinar, and I'll explain a little bit more if this is your first time here. But the main thing is you're here, and that's the right step. My name is John. I'll reintroduce myself a bit later while we wait for others to come in. I think, let me just do a check. We have quite a good number here, and look at the name list. They come from all parts of the world. Fantastic. All right. Okay. So it is 8 p.m. Singapore time. So I think we should get started. This session would be about half an hour to 40 minutes long. And don't worry, I will be sharing the slides after this session as well. Okay. So again, thank you for coming. Let me just bring up my slides now. You can use the chat function throughout the session. So if you have a question, drop a message in the chat for me, and I'll come back to your question later towards the end when we do our reflections and Q&A. If, for example, today we're not able to cover all the questions, what we'll do is that we will try to gather all the questions together, and we'll maybe try to send out a consolidated response so that everybody can learn from each other. One participant has said it's 14 p.m. in your country. I'm quite sure we only have 12 hours for AM and PM, but sure. Thank you for coming nonetheless. I just want to check, are you guys able to hear me and see the screen clearly before I continue? If you can see me or hear me, just drop a message in the chat to say, all good or okay. Thank you so much. All right. So again, once again, for those who have just joined us, because we're getting more and more people coming, we have about, I think, almost 200 people who have registered for tonight's session. But again, this session is recorded, so it'll be shared, and you can play it and share it with your other friends as well. Okay, so welcome to the EON-XR monthly workshops. Now, before I go into the workshop itself, today's topic, in case if you did not notice when you signed up for it, is talking about active learning engagement for outdoor learning. Okay, so today I'll be focusing a lot on how we can use EON-XR in an active learning manner, and more importantly, can use it for outdoor learning. Now, I'll come into the question about why we talk about outdoor learning and all that, but this is today's topic. Now, sorry about that. Let me just briefly introduce myself. Some of you, I look at the name list and I see some familiar people in the who are attending tonight. My name is John. Jonthan is my full name, but you can call me John. I'm actually the solution director for EON Reality. I'm based in Singapore. Broadly, I have 12 over years in learning technology as both an integrator and educator. I used to do classroom instruction as well. And I had the privilege to work with educators from K-12 all the way to adult learning. And right now in EON, I work in helping clients to better understand the use of EON-XR and immersive technologies, that means AR and VR in general, for teaching and learning. Some of you, those of you who know me, I'm quite a fun person, and I'm also very interactive. So please, I may pause and I may ask for responses. Please feel free to put in your response in the chat. Okay, all the chat messages comes to me. I'll be able to view them. Don't worry, it won't. Nobody else will be able to see them for this session. But again, feel free to lend in your thoughts. Okay, so before we dive in, to help you guys, especially if this is your first time here, this session is part of our monthly webinar series. This is something we just started. This is actually session number 2. I believe the last session was held last month by my colleague Jamie, who is based in the US. So today is actually session 2 of this monthly webinar series. What are these series about? So the series is all about covering different ideas, technical know-hows, and all things has to do with EON-XR. Okay, because the fact that you're here means chances are you're probably a subscriber to EON-XR, your school, your institution, or you are using EON-XR already. These webinar series is roughly around 30 to max an hour long because it depends on the topic and the kind of engagement we get. Who conducts this? So it's actually conducted by our customer success team. In EON Reality, we have a group called the customer success team. These are people who come from different backgrounds, specializations, and just like the webinar series goes, we cover different topics for every workshop, so that if you find something that you're interested in, you can just sign up and go for it. If you find that, okay, maybe perhaps it might not be your fancy, you can always still review it in the recorded sessions. But we highly encourage you, come for the live sessions, because that's the time where you can ask questions, drop in the chats. Our team will be able to respond to you. And of course, that can lead to further follow-up after the session as well. In general, the timings may shift, but these workshops actually held usually on the last Wednesday of each month. Why Wednesday? Because slap bang in the middle of the week is a good time. Nobody wants to watch a webinar on a Friday. And we do it at the end of each month so that it's quite consistent. So, if anything, you can put it in your calendar for the final week of each month. There's a monthly webinar series. We will usually send out a email blast giving the details about the webinar and so forth. For disclosure purposes, this session is recorded. We will post it on our EON Reality YouTube site, I believe. And you can share that link with your other colleagues or friends in your institutions or organizations for them to play back. Because we bear in mind that our customer success team is global. So the sessions may be held at different timings. Like, for example, today's 8 p.m. SGT. For those who may be in the other side of the world, for example, in North America, South America, right now is 4 a.m. their time. So to make it accessible to everybody, we record every session nonetheless. So if you can attend the live session, great. If you can't, don't worry, you're not going to miss out. Okay, you're going to have every opportunity to join in. All right. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about our agenda today. So let's go straight into it. Today, what I'm going to be focusing on, is, why talk about outdoors? Are we going through a pandemic, global pandemic right now? And I'll explain why in a moment. But one of my pet peeves is that whenever we use EON-XR, we always think about it in using the flipped classroom, use it in class, in lecture, and so forth. But we hardly talk about the outdoors. So we're going to talk a little bit about the outdoors today. And then also, I always believe going back to the pedagogy, and the question always comes in, what is active learning exactly? So I'll be sharing you a definition that I really like. It's quite simple to understand, and we'll talk about that and how we can incorporate that into our lesson design. Okay. To keep it simple, because for many of you here, this might be your first time here. I assume most, if not all of you, are EON-XR users already. So I want to give you 5 simple tips and ideas to how you can incorporate EON-XR into outdoor learning. Now, to dispel any misconception, when we talk about outdoor learning, we're not talking about K-12 only. Although there might be quite a few examples I'm giving K-12. This could apply to any type of learner. You could be an adult learner, you could be in high school, you could be in a polytechnic, in vocational schools. You can actually use the same strategies nonetheless. What I want to focus here today is to show you how we can apply some of the basic features that we have in the platform and use that in, for outdoor exploration and learning purposes. Okay. I will also circle around at the end to talk about upcoming features to look out for. that may enhance this topic about, how can I create more interesting learning experiences, especially when we talk about outdoor learning. I'll just highlight a few of those new features that will be coming later this year. And of course, we'll do a short reflection at the end of it all. Preferably, if we have time, I would like to hear from you guys, meaning that you can type in the chat your a simple sentence, a thought, or whatsoever. But it's more for us to end off the session in a reflective manner. Okay, so what are the outcomes that we expect today? So number one, you should be able to explain why we consider outdoor learning important. Okay, why do we look at outdoor learning? You should be able to articulate what active learning is. More importantly, I think you should be able to know what are the features in EON-XR that you can use to implement active learning in outdoor scenarios. And lastly, you should be able to generate some ideas on how you could use EON-XR in your institution or organization, how it can be applied in your institution, in other words. Okay. Okay. So why do we look outdoors? For many of us here, I think looking at the name list, the participant list that we have today, we have so many people all around the world, and we are all in varying states of emergency in our countries, right? In different lockdowns and all that. I'm quite blessed that I'm in Singapore. So Singapore currently, we are quite stable at the moment, but anything may change. But again, why do we talk about outdoors? Well, firstly, learning in class is one thing, learning in the lab is another thing, but nothing beats the outdoors. Don't you feel like you want to get out of class, you want to change the learning environment? More importantly, there are many things that you just can't bring into the class. Granted, EON-XR is meant to address some of it, right? We can augment certain things that if the students or the learners cannot go to it, we bring it to the learners. We can use our 360 lesson features, we can use our 3D models to do that. But one of the natural ways that we talk about learning outdoors, and this comes from the chairman of our EON Reality Education Board. So he talks about this all the time. He's a biologist by training, Dr. Bertha Anderson. The most natural way for us to learn is in 3D, in 3 dimensions. Okay, so we're not talking about AR, VR here. We're just talking purely 3 dimensions, right? If I want to learn about something, I can take it, I can pick it up, I can look at it, I can feel it, and so forth. Now, learners are engaged because they can see and learn things in 3D. That's a point about why your institutions went for EON-XR, isn't it? We learn in 3 dimensions, and we learn more effectively in 3 dimensions, where applicable, of course. But more importantly, learning can be shared and put into real-world context. So if you want to be in a real-world context, you're not going to learn that in the lab. You need to go out into the world, right? And so that's why we look at the outdoors, because the outdoors ultimately gives us that real-world experience. When I say outdoors, I'm also talking about anything beyond the classroom or beyond the lab, because that's where you see application. So from there, we can get abstract thinking. You can develop abstract thinking that can be visualized and understood. And of course, all this becomes real-world application ultimately. So we look at the outdoors because that is where life is. We can't look at the screen all the time. Don't forget, EON-XR end of the day is to augment what you can't do or what you can't replicate easily. It's not meant to 100% to replace the actual hands-on application. But the outdoor world also gives us less repeatable scenarios that you might not often get. So that's where we talk about real-world application, because the real world is different. The real world is never the same all the time. So that is why we look at the outdoors. Now we better understand why we look at the outdoors. What is active learning, right? Why do we even look at active learning? Because active learning ties in really importantly with the concept about learning in the real world. So I got this reference from Canada, from an institute in Canada. A link is below. I like this quite a bit because it breaks it up into a very simple concept. So active learning means basically you are learning through discussions, problem solving, case studies, role plays, and other methods. Okay, it doesn't mean you notice that much of this is not guided. Meaning that it's not instructor-led. Instructors don't tell them, okay, this is what you're gonna do. It is a lot of collaborative work, but it's more importantly, it's a lot of exploratory work as well. To role play, you need to to role play, you need to be into that role. To go through case studies, you're learning what actually happened. When you're problem solving, you're given a problem and you have to solve it. These are things that are that can be changed. It's not fixed all the time. But active learning puts a greater degree of responsibility on the learner, rather than, the lecturer coming out with a EON-XR lesson and say, okay, go through this information, go through the 100% of all the voice memos and all the activities inside. But instructors still, whether you're a teacher or instructor, guidance is still crucial in an active learning classroom. It doesn't mean that, I'm going to give the learner a problem, ask them to go and solve it themselves, and I'm just going to sit back and just watch them do it. No, you still have to guide them. This is where today we're going to talk about some of the simple tips in here where you can use the features in EON-XR to help them guide them in their thinking. And more importantly, how you can apply it, of course, in different ways, not necessarily just for active learning, not necessarily for just outdoor learning as well. Now, one key point though, active learning may range in length. It can be a few minutes, can be a few sessions, can be multiple class sessions. But more importantly, it also doesn't mean it has to be in the classroom either. That's why I also want to tie this to outdoor learning. Okay, so all these slides again will be shared with you. I tell you what, in fact, what I'll do is let me just share this. Let me just share the file now. In fact, I think that will be easier for everybody. So let's bring up the file. Here we go. Let's do that here. Okay, so I've shared the slides. If you go to on your right hand panel, you should see a word that says files. You should be able to find the slides there. At the end of the session, I'll share you a link where you can download the same slides as well. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to try to build an EON-XR learning experience using the principles of active learning, but we're also going to put it in a scenario where you're going to do it outside. When I say outside, outdoors, we're talking about anything beyond the classroom. Okay, we're not talking about at home. We're talking about, beyond. It could be in a park. It could be in a workshop. It could be, it could be a kind of learning hunt, like a treasure hunt kind of scenario. Okay. So, how do we do this with EON-XR? That's the big question we're going to do today. So, what I've done is, I boiled it down to 5 tips because I think 5 would be just nice. But before that, you kind of need to have some things with you, right? You don't need it now, but to make this work, you probably need a few things. Like number one, you definitely need an EON-XR account, right? The fact you're here means you probably have one. Okay, so that's no problem. Again, the fact that you're here means you probably have a mobile device that has an EON-XR with EON-XR app installed. Why mobile device? Because again, it's outdoors. If you don't have a mobile device, you're not going to be able to go outdoors. You're not going to carry your laptop and run around. That doesn't make sense. For the tips today that I'll be showing you, you can use it with both 3D and 360 lessons. So obviously you need to design a lesson yourself. We're going to use a lot of the AR mode in these tips. So, just remember this, okay? We're going to use the AR mode quite a bit. Now, ideally, if you have a 360 camera, that would be great. If you don't, it's fine. The reason why you need a 360 camera is because usually when you talk about outdoor learning and you're trying to design something, you might need to, do some custom photos, meaning that you're going to take actual photos of actual locations in wherever you are. It is no more about immersion, like, hey, I'm going to bring, I'm in Singapore, I'm going to bring you to the UK. This is about using your environment, your location. So if you happen to have a 360 camera, perfect. If you don't, it's fine. There are applications in your app stores that allow you to take 360 photos using your regular camera. If you're not aware, the EON-XR app on your phone can use panorama photos to create a 360 photo. It's not perfect, it's not great, but it still works. So even if you don't have that, you don't know where to find the app, your existing phone app already can take what we call panoramic photos. Panoramic photos are your photos are long. Usually take it like a sunset, those long photos. EON-XR will help you stitch it into a 360 photo for you. Okay. And lastly, you need some imagination and creativity. You kind of need to go beyond your comfort zone to really think about how you want to apply the principles that we're going to cover today into into your lessons. Now, again, today we have a lot of people from all different backgrounds, different places, and so forth. So all of you are teaching different subjects. In fact, like I said, some of you here, I do recognize your names. Um, uh, you be teaching different subjects. Some of you come from the sciences, some of you come from the engineering side, some of you come from the design side, some of you don't even come from any of those faculties, some of you even come from humanities and so forth. What I need you to do today is to remove all the conception like, oh, this feature doesn't apply to me, oh, this tip doesn't work for me. Think about how you might want to use it in your subject, how you might want to use it, how might this be a way to do something that you couldn't have done before. That's the point about you adopting a tool like a learning tool like EON-XR. You don't want to teach the way you have taught before. So you kind of need to do away with that. Nope, this don't apply to me. Okay, you could have a little bit of imagination, try a bit of creativity. If you need a bit more of that, ask your friends, ask your colleagues who are using EON-XR as well. Or else fails, come and look for me, and I'll be able to try to help you. Or just reach out to any of our EON friends who will be able to maybe give you some ideas of what to do. And of course, you have the Monday workshops to come and join as well. Okay, so we're clear on what we need to do all of this. Now, you don't need this today. Today is just a webinar session. But, after today, you might want to think about making sure that you have all these items in place. Okay. All right. So today I'm going to be today I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 simple tips or ideas to incorporate EON-XR into outdoor learning. And we're going to apply active learning principles here. So these are the 5. The first one is called tap on using voice memos, videos, and annotations. This one, all of this I'll be showing you today. The second thing is you can create learning spots using QR codes. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this, so we're gonna show you how you can do that in EON-XR. The third tip is we're going to use 3D models for comparison with the real life. Okay, and I'll show you some examples of that. I found actually a pretty good model in the platform, which I didn't know existed until today. Use 3D environments for context. This is one of my favorite modes. If you're not aware, we released version 8.4 of the platform a few weeks ago, and that came with a new mode called 3D environments for the Oculus Quest. Coming in our version 9 release, come end of May, we're going to have a new category in our library called 3D environments. And again, I'll be showing you how you can get started in using a 3D environment during this session. And lastly, you can use 360 photo lessons for subject immersion and learning hunts. Now, this one is a little bit harder to explain because it kind of depends on where you are and what you're trying to do. But again, keep an open mind to this, and I'll be sharing you how I would design my lesson around this concept about outdoor learning and including and applying the active learning principles behind this. All of these are interrelated in terms of what I'll be showing you in tip 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. All right. So let's do the hands-on session. I'll be showing you how this can be done. So I tell you what, I'm going to leave this up here so that we can always refer back to it. Now, let's start with first tip. Tap on using voice memos, videos, and annotations. Okay, what you see on the screen right now is the EON-XR platform. I've already signed in for the sake of time. Let me go to my workspace. For today, I'll be using the XR library as my for my demonstration purposes. Okay. Okay. So let's use this lesson here. Okay, I'm going to click on this lesson. How did the castle fall? So I'm going to be using a humanities/history type of lesson. Okay. So let me launch my lesson editor. I believe for most of you here, you should be very familiar with this. You should have at least undergone our training. Or at least our EON-XR educator training. So all I'm doing right now is launching this empty lesson that I pre-prepared. Okay. Tell me if I've gotten this wrong. How many of you here, when you are adding a voice memo or annotation or a video, all you're doing is just giving information? That means it's just factual. If you could use the chat, just tell me, how many of you actually, tried using it in a different way? Or all you're doing is just, copy and pasting information for the student to listen to? Let me just get a sense here. So how do you use the voice memos, the YouTube links? How do you currently use it? Is it just giving information? All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so some of you had responded. Yeah, so one of the things about using EON-XR, and when I usually run when I run the educator course, one of the things I usually recommend to educators is to think a bit beyond just giving information and factual information. So in case for those who are like wondering what exactly I'm talking about, right? Okay, so here we have a empty lesson. This is a castle, and I've called up our annotations. So annotations are basically labels, right? All I need to do here is if I want to create a lesson about a particular part of the model. So let's start with the bridge here. All I do is click on the plus sign, and then now I created what we call a memo, a learning element, and I can now add a audio, text to speech, audio input, audio narration. So what happens is this: what most teachers would do is the bridge is whatever text it may be. Okay, whatever. Usually it's just very information, very factual. Okay, so one of the ways you can use EON-XR from an active learning perspective, and again, we're going to tie this to the outdoor learning in a moment. Right now, we're just going through the lesson design part. One of the ways you can make things interesting, let's say today I'm going to be creating a lesson about the castle, and there's a particular scene I want the students to replay. So imagine this is a history class or a humanities class where I want to challenge the students to understand how did the castle fall. Okay, so instead of giving factual information, I might give a little bit. So the bridges, whatever, maybe one sentence or two sentences. Why did you think it was designed that way? So I start asking a question in my voice, my voice memo. So when the student plays it back and he hears a question, he or she needs to think about why. And of course, with the 3D model, the student will be able to observe and expand on it. And we're going to tie this to the outdoor part of it in a moment. But he's able to manipulate the 3D model and and ask himself as a reflective question, why is it designed that way? And of course, what you can also do with the voice memo is that you can use it to give instructions. So for example, launch this lesson in AR mode and observe how the bridge is designed. So you can use the voice memos to not only give information, but to give reflective questions. But you can also use it to give instructions. So I see that there are a few people in here that actually mentioned that, yes, they have tried doing this. So this is a great way for you to tap on the use that since the student is already in the lesson, you can challenge them and give them activities to do that are beyond what's within EON-XR, like asking them to launch AR mode and do an observation. So this is one way you can use the voice memo. The other way you can do this is also, for example, I could create an entire MC lesson with no voice memos, but I want them to do an observation about the castle, for example. Now, another way of doing this is I can actually use the annotations itself. So instead of calling this a bridge, I can actually rename this. So let's rename this. So for those who remember to rename something, you just have to click on the text, and then you can rename it at the field, the text field at the bottom of your screen. So why are bridges? Why is this bridge built this way? So now you can even post questions using the annotations. And then of course, you can again use a voice memo to perhaps give another activity or to explain more what you want the student to or the learner to go through. So this is another great way of using the inbuilt features in a non-standard manner. So don't use it as just purely, okay, this is a bridge, this is a bailey, this is a well. Use it as a way to question, to design, and get the students to think about. They own their learning. They have to find out why, and then they will give you the answers as well. Now, even for videos, YouTube videos, if you're attaching videos to your lessons, my suggestion is, since you already have a mobile phone, just take a selfie and record, your own instruction sets for the students. You can just, record a short snippet. You have your own YouTube account and just copy and paste the link inside. It really takes no time at all. The tip that I usually give for most educators, use the unlisted method. So when you post a video in YouTube, you can put it as unlisted so nobody can find it. Only those with the link can view it. You can reuse these videos for any kind of lesson later on anyway, not only for EON-XR. So you can do a selfie video and give instructions about, certain things you want the students to do, or things that maybe you want them to observe based on this model, for example. Now, when you have all of these, when we go the outdoors, imagine that perhaps maybe this is a historical story about a particular castle that fell. I could ask them, okay, students, go and find a hill, find a small hill, launch this lesson in AR mode, and place this castle on the hill. Now, I want you to observe and figure out how did the castle fall in the first place? Where were the weak points, for example? Now, this could apply to anything. It could be a science example, about biology, and so forth. And in fact, we're going to talk about that in a short while. So here you can use you can use videos, you can use voice memos, you can even use the annotations as a way to stir up active learning concepts. Okay, I'm going to close this lesson now. Okay, so that's the first step. So make use of the voice memos to not only just give information, but even to get them to do reflective thinking and even instructions if you need to. Okay, the second thing we're going to do here is this. Second tip, create learning spots using QR codes. So again, let's go back to this castle example. So imagine that I'm creating a lesson again for maybe a history or humanities lesson, and I'm going to get the students to go outdoors and explore this castle. Now, before that, what I can actually do with any lesson anyway, you can actually create what we call quick links, QR codes, quick response code, that students, especially for guided, where you can put these QR codes anywhere, and students will just take their phone, scan it with the camera, and then it will launch them straight into the EON-XR lesson. Now, obviously, the student needs to have EON-XR installed on their phone. They need to be signed in for most cases before that lesson will launch. But how do I do that? So I recommend this all the time. So this is a lesson that I've designed. I just go to the share function here. If you can see it here, it's the one that Android users are familiar with. Click on it. Let's toggle to share it. And then here you get the URL. Now, obviously, for those who are familiar, you can take this URL, paste it, share it with the students, put it in your LMS course or whatever, it's fine. But there's actually a second button here if you notice. If you click on it, it will automatically generate a QR code for you. You can download the QR code, paste it in a particular location. Students will go there, scan it, and launch the lesson that you want them to launch. This is a great way to guide students to make sure that they only launch the lesson that you want. That's a key point. Of course, using the QR code, it also allows you to attach this to other things like your LMS course again, or WhatsApp group, send it to the students and get them to launch it themselves. It's a bit different from assigning lesson students. Why? Because when you think about the outdoors, well, depending on the students, depending on the age of the students, you want to guide them a little bit more. You want to tell them, okay, go to this location, find the QR code, launch the lesson, go through the 5 lessons that you find in that space. So you can put up 5 different QR codes that are meant for the students to view it in that context. Remember, the outdoors is the real world. And maybe the lesson that you want them to go through has context to the real world. So having the QR codes in certain locations are important. In Singapore, in many of our K-12 schools, we have what we call a science garden or a science trail, for example. And so instead of putting up little player cards that show like this is what species of plants or what species of fish with a description, you can put a QR code where students can take out their phone, scan it, or their device and scan it, and they can learn about it live. They can have interactivity and even an EON-XR lesson as well. So it's that's the second tip that I recommend. So remember, click on the share function. Click on the this 4 squares here at the end, and you get a QR code. And you can again use it over and over again. All right. So that's tip number 2. Okay. So imagine that now you're developing a lesson for an outdoor experience, whatever subject or topic you're trying to do. And then, you've created your lesson. Now you have your QR codes, you have placed them in the right locations. Let's talk about how you could use 3D models for comparison with real life. This one is probably the most straightforward, I think, among all the tips here. So let me show you another example. Let me go back to my workspace. I was quite excited to actually find a model that a model like this. So I have to confess, I have not even researched much about this topic. But when I was a child, or when I was a lot younger, but I think my daughters are probably the same. There's actually this plant. Now, this plant, when you touch its leaves, it will it'll fall in onto itself. You find this in the morning, especially with water dew, morning dew drips on it, and then it will just fold itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to show you this lesson. I'm going to bring up my my mobile device. So let me just go full screen here. All right, so again, we're all familiar with this, right? EON-XR app. You sign in, you'll be able to go to your workspace, you will find all the lessons you have created. Now, I'm going to launch that lesson on my mobile device. And I just want to show you a simple example of how you can bring using 3D models to bring it into real life. So one of the things is that when you're doing outdoor learning, again, outdoor is not necessarily mean, out in the wild, but, basically out the classroom. When you do outdoor learning, there are things that you may want students or learners to compare. So this is one great way. So this plant, when you touch it, the leaves will fall. I love playing this when I was a kid, because what we do is we always wait and see how long before the leaves open up again. But the thing is that this is just a replica, right? And maybe perhaps you want to teach a little bit of some biology, a comparison in biology. So we can use AR mode for this. So maybe they're using this in the classroom, or maybe perhaps in your in this scenario, maybe that in your science garden you have this plant there. Put the QR code there. Get the students to scan, and they launch the lesson. And maybe as part of your introductory instructions, you can ask them to launch AR mode. So which is what I'm doing now. So I think you can see my screen. I'm launching AR mode, and I'm putting the plant here. So imagine if I had the actual plant, I could have the actual plant here, and I could compare it. And maybe if part of my activities or my lesson, I could be learning about the plant and ask to compare how does digital version differ from the actual plant. So again, you're just bringing a digital object into the real world and getting students to compare. Again, this is a biology example, but this could apply to anything. It could be engineering, it could be chemistry. I have worked with some educators that actually use 3D models to compare the experiment setup using a digital model versus an actual lab model, for example. Or when you're in the field, you can actually compare digital versions of maybe a particular machine versus the actual machine to better understand where do you get it wrong in terms of setting it up and so forth. So this is a great way for you to do a basic comparison. Okay, let me just exit this. Okay. So using 3D models for comparison in real life really makes a difference. Now, this is important because if your institution actually has AR Assist, AR Assist is one of our EON-XR modules that will allow you to not only communicate with others, but you can even draw upon your 3D models. This is part of our roadmap later this year, where you can even draw upon 3D models and bring it augmented to what you are seeing in real life. So it's a little bit like what I did just now, except using in a live communication with somebody else. Being able to incorporate 3D models into this kind of activity is important. So go back to the active learning principles here. You could create a lesson, you could create a 3D lesson where the instructions for the students would be, go to the science drill, look out for the QR code, scan the lesson, and play it back. That could be your instructions for the students to launch the EON-XR lesson. And the instructions could be, hey, compare the digital object with the real one. What are some of the differences you notice? And then from there, you can also give them some information or some tips using the the annotations, using the voice memos, or even in your videos as well. This is a great way for you to do that kind of comparison. Okay. So that's tip number 3. I think tip number 3 is something fairly obvious for most people. Okay, so let's now go into tip number 4. Use 3D environments for context. Okay, so this is one of my favorite. Experiences. Okay, first, I need to explain what 3D environments are. Now, in our version 8.4 release, we now enable what we call 3D environments when you're using what we call the Oculus Quest. Now, some of you, maybe even before 8.4, had realized that now we have a mode called one-to-one scale. A one-to-one scale means that I can actually take a 3D model and specify that this model is designed to scale, which means that when I use it in AR mode, it would actually there'll be a new option for me to make it, one-to-one scale. Now, how do I specify that? So let me just quickly guide you through that, if I may. Okay, so right now I'm back in the EON-XR platform. I'm in my workspace and I'm in my asset page, not lesson page. Okay, so these are some of these models here, or actually all these models here are models that I have uploaded into the platform. So I just want to show you this example. This is a BIM model. So for those who are in architecture, you'll be familiar with this. It's basically a 3D model, but it's using it's like it's basically a design of it's architectural design. So I uploaded this model, and I can straight away use it, right? Once it's uploaded, I can create a lesson around this. But if I scroll down a little bit more, when I go and look at the asset properties, you will see that here there are some other options here. Now, I know that this model has been designed to be what we call one-to-one scale. So I'm actually looking at it in the actual size. So for example, some of the common model properties that you're not aware of, you can specify whether the model has animations or not, whether is it animated and whether does it have multiple animations. So this comes down for those who are doing model design. In some cases, the model, you may know the model comes with animation, but you want to disable it for whatever reason. This is where you can disable it. So in this case, this is a building, there's no animation. Multi-mesh means that is this model one piece or multiple pieces? Okay, obviously this comes with multiple pieces. And then the key one that I want to highlight here is the one-to-one scale. So right now I uploaded this model and I specify this model to be one-to-one, meaning that I want it to be one-to-one scale. So how would this look like in real life? So let me just show you a quick video recording. Now, this is a common video I use for a lot of my presentations. So this is a one-to-one scale model. Now you notice that when I go to AR mode now, you will see that there will be a new option here that says one-to-one. Okay, so let's run through it and see what happens. So first I drop the house, I drop the building, and then what I do is I can tap on the one-to-one scale to automatically or instantly blow it up to full size. So now you can see the blue is now full size. I'm walking out of the house. So let me just let's just walk out of this house, and now I can actually see this house in full size. So this is literally how the 5-story house would look like in if it was really built in this small little location. More importantly, let me show you how big it can go. So here I use the X-ray mode, and now I can see that it is really far. This is about a good 15 to 20 meters from where I dropped it to where I'm standing now. So the model is huge. Now, why is this important? Because when we talk about outdoor learning, is when you're in the outdoors, there are certain models or maybe certain topics that you want to do where it's great in full size. So let's go back to that lesson that I did earlier. Maybe what I'll do this time is let me bring up my mobile phone again. Okay, so here's my mobile phone. This is one of my favorite lessons because in Singapore, we don't have castles here. So how do I explain to students or to expose people to, how big a castle is, how difficult was it really to invade it? So this is a great way to augment it. And you need space for this, right? You need a lot of space for this. So here's a model of a castle. Now, I did not enable one-to-one for this, if I'm not mistaken, but I want to show you the concept behind it. So many of us would be familiar with it. So number one, we are all familiar with AR mode. So here we go. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just place it. So imagine if I'm outdoors, I can place it anywhere. But more importantly, I can scale it up. So again, with our markerless AR technology, we can actually scale it up full size. So I'm just going to do this. Now, because I'm doing the webinar, I'm kind of wearing my headphones and I'm tethered to the table. But imagine getting your learners, whatever topic it may be, whether you're teaching clean energy and you want to show them how large an actual wind turbine is, or like me, if I'm trying to teach humanities, I can get the students to physically walk around this virtual environment. Maybe I tell them, okay, go and find a hill, put this castle on the hill and imagine that battle scene and walk around it and explain to me what are the difficulties for the invaders, but how did the invaders succeed? So you can actually do all of this very remotely. More importantly, the features that you built in, things like the annotations also work. So it means that when you apply the active learning principles, your audio narrations, even the annotations, the videos will all be playable. So while the students are exploring this, they are applying the same active learning principles that you have created and incorporated into your lesson. Okay. So now, unfortunately, because I'm limited for space here, because I'm at home, but that's why we do this in the outdoors, because you can scale this up to a huge size experience. And remember, all this is using your mobile device. Okay. All right. So I hope that gives you a better idea of how you can use what we call 3D environments. So 3D environments are basically assets that the moment you enable it into one-to-one scale, is a great way to do this. Now, some of you are asking, I can see this question coming out quite a bit. So let me explain. Some of you are asking like, okay, so now I'm using AR mode, right? And I have that building. How do I interact on the second and third floor? Okay, so this is the differences between AR and VR, right? So AR is talking about bringing digital objects into the real world. VR is about bringing you into a whole new world. Now, in AR, obviously you can't fly. you're still bound by the laws of physics. So you can't actually interact with the second or third floor. But that's where VR comes in. So with the new 8.4 release, when you specify models or lessons as an environment, so this is an example when you're using the Oculus Quest, for instance, we can actually launch the lesson in environment mode. And then now you can actually freely fly around, move around, up and down the second, third floor. So what you're seeing on the screen is the same lesson launched on the Oculus Quest in VR. And now you can interact with the second and third floor. So of course, this comes down to your lesson design, right? Like what exactly are you trying to teach or achieve? And then of course, the model would be, you find a suitable model for that. The castle is a very good example for that. And of course, if you can't do it in really full scale size, you can always shrink it a little bit and you'll be able to see from the top and the second and third floor and so forth. Yeah, so I hope that helps, because I see quite a lot of people asking about that suddenly. Okay, so that's tip number 4. Because of time, we're going to move ahead. Okay, the last tip. Use 360 photo lessons for subject immersion and learning hunts. Well, this is a little bit of an extension of what we talked about in point 1 and 2. So let's do this. Let's go back to my workspace and let's go to a lesson that I've prepared. So I call this a Chinatown Quest. It's basically an empty lesson again. So let's click on that. Now, again, the same principles apply. So we talked about using the share link, right? So you can also generate a QR code for 360. Okay, so it works perfectly the same. Let me bring up the lesson editor here. Okay, so I don't know how many of you here had tried creating your own 360 lesson. It's really simple. It's really cool. But very importantly, what you can do with 360 is this. So we often talk about using 360 as a way for like things like safety training, immersion, and so forth. But all those are kind of one way, meaning the person views and consumes. Here, let's imagine that we're doing, this is Chinatown in Singapore, by the way. Okay, this is one of the locations. Now, what we can actually do is that number one, the behavior for 360 lessons are slightly different from 3D lessons. One of the biggest differences is the introduction. In a 360 lesson, the introduction automatically plays. Whereas in a 3D lesson, you need to click the play button. Okay. Now we can use this to our advantage. The first thing we can do, again, using the voice, the voice memos, you can actually, rather than being factual, you can give you can create a learning trail using 360. So let me give you an example of a learning trail. Welcome to the start of this learning trail. Oops, sorry. Go to all the points pointed out in this 360 photo and look for the QR codes for instructions. Okay, so I'm creating a simple instruction set. Now, here you notice that in this lesson, I've created multiple locations. So for example, the Chinatown Visitor Center. Now, here I could specify, okay, all right, students, go to the Chinatown Visitor Center. So they see that, okay, so there is 1 point here, 2 points, maybe 3 points. Now, if they are in the physical location, they would have to go there and they'll find the next QR code, they scan it, and they'll launch a lesson around this, maybe about, let's say, let's go back to the, they might have to launch a lesson about the Chinatown Visitor Center and go through particular learning objectives. So now it becomes a little bit of a trail. They come back to the first lesson and then they have to go through what they need to go through. Now, that's the first thing. Now, the second thing, of course, you can still be factual. You can still give them information, use videos and annotation, all that. But remember the tip I gave about using annotation. So let's say, for example, let's go down here, Smith Street. Let's rename this. Okay. Why is Smith Street named as it is? And so now when students are brought to this location and they see an annotation about, the different locations, they now have tasking where they need to go and maybe start asking people or researching or finding out why is it named as it is. This is different from, giving you information. Okay, Smith Street is named because whatever reason it may be. So you can use this as a form of subject immersion. Here, the subject is, why is this place named as it is? So now the information is not easily found. They have to start asking and going around and interviewing people. It could also be for outdoor, again, for a treasure learning hunt. This is great for K-12 kids. They will love this. Of course, obviously for safety reasons, please choose a location where, there are no roads and whatsoever. But these are a great way for you to be immersed into the subject area. Okay. Yeah. So it's really simple for you using these 5 tips to do that. I know it seems a bit simple, but then it boils down, again, because I'm talking to such a generic group of participants today, it kind of depends on what your subject matter requires. If you're trying to apply things, let's say, at the higher education level, the 360 photo lesson is a great way, especially when you're doing lab training. For example, if a good example is we worked with an aviation academy once, and I gave them an example. This is a cockpit, right? Aircraft cockpit. Do anybody ever ask why is the cockpit designed that way? So we apply active learning principles where we ask questions and then the students have to go and find out the answers themselves. And then, of course, I think most of you understand about the whole self-directed learning approach. You might have heard of this, where now students have to create their own lessons to respond to a task that you're given to them. So using 360, using 3D lessons, again, even screen recordings are a great way for you to do all of that. And don't forget, we have other features like collaboration mode, where you can even record the session, where you can be collaborating with the students. Students will be showing you what they're doing. And then, you can record the session and play it back later as a form of submission. So I hope these 5 tips make it really easy for you to remember and to try out yourselves. Okay. Now, some strategies here, because I'm mindful for time. Always remember to have clear learning goals and outcomes planned for your learners. Okay, if you don't have a clear one, it means that the whole learning experience might be muddled because it might be the technology that's overtaking the learning. The learning always comes first. These are the kind of interactions. Do you want them to go in AR mode? Do you want them to physically run around? Do you want them to go through certain instruction sets? What kind of interaction do you want them to have? Especially with each other as well, not only with the technology, but with each other. Is it is it a solo kind of activity, or is it a group activity? How would that group activity work? Think about the different functionalities we have in EON-XR. You don't have to use everything. You can just use the parts that you need. All right. Just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use everything. Okay. Try not to give direct information to the learners. Try to include open-ended questions. I think that's a great way for you to incorporate that active learning kind of approach. Chunk your lessons. Don't put everything into one lesson. You can break up into multiple lessons. Don't forget, we have a duplication feature. So you can still use the same, for example, 360 lesson, just duplicate it, and that will be your next, touch point for the students. Okay, so you don't have to put everything into one lesson. Blend the use of EON-XR with other learning materials. If you're using an LMS, for example, and your students are very familiar with using the LMS on their mobile device, then instead of using the QR code, use a URL link. Or incorporate the URL link into the LMS as part of the learning, maybe as part of the quizzes or part of the learning outcomes or whatever it may be they require them to use. Blend it with other learning materials. You don't have to have it only in EON-XR. I think at K-12 level, particularly, you can put it with your worksheets as well. It's a great way of doing that. Okay, and more importantly, make it fun. Learning is meant to be fun. Nobody likes to be dragged to school. So even beyond these activities, talk about outdoor learning and active learning, design your lessons to be fun. Make it interactive. Again, you don't need to use all features. Maybe one feature, two features might be all that it takes to change the way your learners think about the lesson topic. Okay, right. So very quickly, I'm just going to spend the last 5 minutes to talk about this. So what's around the corner? What are the features that are coming out for EON-XR that would apply maybe to active learning and outdoor learning, or for other reasons anyway? So the first thing is we are actively exploring the idea of integrating scanning. So remember, we talked about comparing the digital object and the real world. So what you can actually do, what we're exploring is the ability to use your mobile device to scan maybe an object or a plant or a scene, and then you can import it directly into EON-XR through your mobile device. So that's something we're looking at. Hopefully that comes at the end of the year, but already today there are apps that allow you to do 3D scanning. And so you can actually be able to bring those models, upload it into the platform already. But what we're looking at is integrating into the mobile app itself. A few other things we're looking at is augmented reality. That basically it means that if you place a AR object behind something, that something will actually block the object. So it's a great way for you to get realism again into what you're looking at, and gives that. So again, if you're doing outdoor, if I put a castle on top of the hill, if there's a tree blocking my view, I will actually see a tree blocking my view. So something very exciting. And of course, we are trying to do native adoption of LiDAR. LiDAR, if you use the iPhone 12 or 12 Pro Max, or 12 Pro, you know what LiDAR is. Okay, LiDAR is a scanner that allows you to place AR objects with a lot more accuracy. One of the key things, okay, we talk about outdoor learning, right, outside the classroom, cloud anchoring. So cloud anchoring means that you'll be able to specify, instead of using QR codes, you'll be able to specify a particular location. When the learner goes there, something like this will pop up, and then the person can click on it and a lesson might launch. So this is something very exciting. We should be seeing this coming up pretty soon. And then of course, tracking points and even automated machine learning on how maybe it sees an object, the 3D object will automatically recognize it and it will apply it right over it, So these are some of the things that in EON we are actively working on to make that learning experience even better and heightened. Okay, because of time, last item, reflection. Based on what you have heard today, some of the basic, we went through quite a bit actually, but we simplified it also. Active learning, outdoor learning strategies, and some of the features that I showed you just now. How could I incorporate EON-XR to heighten my learners' learning experience? Now, some of the things that I showed you in here doesn't necessarily mean it's only for outdoor. You can do it in class, you can do it on campus, and so forth. But I hope this tips gives you an idea. Like, can I add on to how my learners are learning now? Can I do something that I have not done, I have not tried before? I highly encourage you to try it. Again, remember I talked about creativity and imagination. Give it a try. You'd be surprised. I've worked with teachers that said, no, my students, you know, they're not going to respond well to that. It might be true, but it also might not be. For all you may know, it might change the way your classroom is forever, just through that one magical lesson. So I'm just going to leave you here with that reflection. And very importantly, you know, thank you for coming. And I really encourage everybody to stay safe. Looking at the time, unfortunately, I don't think we have time to go through all the Q&A. But let me just quickly briefly mention or answer 2 or 3 of those key questions I see. I see there's a question about if you're facing a problem. Yeah, unfortunately, this is not the right forum for for us to respond to any technical problems you have. Use the reporting function. So, for example, here, if you have a problem with a lesson or a feature, click on the question mark here and report the issue through the platform. This way, our support team will be better able to help you. There's a question about workshops. So this is a monthly workshop. It runs every month. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it's the last. It's actually the last Wednesday of every month. But of course, it might change depending on who the trader is. But they'll always be on the last week of the month. There was a webinar session yesterday where we announced our version 8.4 release, and of course what's coming around the corner with version 9 as well. There is one more workshop, which is a masterclass that will be held once every quarter by our Chief Learning Officer, Dr. Peter Luca. So do look out for information about that. That will be a great way. If you attend 2 of those workshops, you will get a special certificate at the end of it all. Provided you complete all the assignments that Dr. Luca gives you. Don't worry, he's assured me it's not difficult stuff, but you know, do look out for the details. So yes, there's no workshop on Monday at all. Yeah, so this is it. Okay, and last one. Let's see. How do we get hold of you? Okay, so to get hold of me, it's for those who know me, that's great. If you already know your lead administrator or the customer success person that's working with you, that's fine. Another way to reach out to us is through this email, which is EON-XR@eonreality.com. You can email us. Please specify to us which institution are you from, which country you're from, and then what we can do is we can always help push your request to the right person within your time zone to help you. We're more than happy to support you in any way we can, and come along this journey with you. Okay, with that, we really has had time. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful participant, and you know, stay safe, take care, and hopefully one day we'll all get to meet each other face to face pretty soon. All right, thank you everyone. Bye now, and again, the slides, feel free to download it. The link will be probably attached with the YouTube video in the description. All right, take care everybody. Stay safe. Bye.